Chito here today with a story from the distant lands of Japan. I spent all of April in Japan working with a friend on a project that involved lots of vintage lenses and cool exotic optics, which is also why I stopped posting around that time. One day we went out to hunt for cheap glass, and my friend was telling me how he always asked in his usual vintage camera stores if they had any anamorphics, or if they've seen any anamorphics, or if they knew what anamorphics were, and always got a negative answer. And I was telling him about my experience from Brazil, which was basically the same thing. So we are walking in Ginza, this neighborhood that has a lot of vintage camera stores, and we enter the first store, which is Lemon Camera. And just as we enter, I go to the first shelf I go to, and I'm like, dude, that's anamorphic right there. It turns out to be this Hypergonar, and he sees it, gets it right away. The price is not super cheap, but it was still far better than eBay, so he buys it, and this is the story of how I got to test this lens. Focus was a bit stiff on this one, so if I didn't have JSD's FVD, I'd be in a sea of trouble. My biggest challenge shooting with this rig was holding it steady because of the overall length and weight. Image quality is okay when stopped down, still showing a fair amount of blooming. And this is Ari and I at Miyajima, the Deer Island. We thought it was a good idea to climb this huge hill. It turned out to be Mount Misen, and we almost missed the boat back. The Hypergonar is quite soft when shooting wide open, giving it all a somewhat dreamy look, and the flares are pretty trippy. I think I like this footage mostly because of the colors rather than image quality. Oh, and this was using the Phantom LUTs by Joe Famularo. You can find a link in the description to get them, and use the code TITO, capital T, for a 15% discount. This is only one of the many Hypergonars out there. They were made in France by the father of anamorphic, Henri Chrétien. It is definitely a projection lens with super thick metal walls. It weighs around 680 grams, which is over 1.5 pounds, and you can focus down to 1.5 meters, but it's, as I said, super double focus, and focus was stiff. It does not have front or rear threads, which means you're going to need a clamp to align, and with this much weight, it means it's going to put stress on the clamp and on the mount of your taking lens, so use rails when using a setup this heavy. And as I said before, I had the FVD, but the FVD doesn't really fit over the front of this lens, so I had to get a tiny screwdriver in a distant city just to remove the front ring and lock focus by doing that, and attach the FVD to the front. It was not fun. Going prices on eBay are all over the place, from $400 to $650, and after testing this one, I honestly think that's insane. This lens is not worth this much money. Stay away, get it for cheap. Image quality is never okay wide open, even using proper diopters, which means this might be a case of bad alignment, but it sharpens up a lot when stopped down. The edges are shady, and if you can shoot 4x3 and avoid edge areas entirely, go for it. Flares are maybe the only remarkable thing about this lens. They show this infinity symbol kind of thing that I've only seen a few times, and it would be a cool thing to make your footage stand out. But then if you're relying on only flares to stand out, I think you're in trouble. Vignetting is not terrible. It's unusable at 50mm unless you crop some more in post, but it almost clears full frame at 85, which means you can clear 2.4 to 1 around 65mm. 135 is completely clear, but I'm yet to see something that vignettes at 135mm. Overall, this is not a bad scope, but it's far from my list of favorites. Actually, not even close to my list of second runners. It features a lot of the traits that make me dislike projection lenses, such as incredibly heavy, super long, double focus, and a lot of the hassle that you go through to shoot with it. I don't feel it's warranted just to get okay image quality. At least I got the chance to play with it and you learned from my experience. You're welcome. I'll take a like as a payment. Yeah, I don't mind that. And if you are in the business of not spending money on scopes you're not gonna love, you should probably subscribe and check out the back catalog of this channel, because I have tested a lot of scopes. So you can look at the ones that you find interesting and go for those instead of shooting randomly and ending up with a scope that you're gonna sell right after unpacking. So hit subscribe, hit the like button, and please leave a comment if you have any ideas or suggestions. I'm Chito, and I'll see you next week.